At the end of the second episode of The Amazing Digital Circus, Pomni's new friend Gummigoo is wiped from existence by Caine before her very eyes. Today, I'm gonna go into what happened, why Caine killed Gummigoo, and the secrets Caine may be hiding. Starting with my first theory that Caine is actually telling the truth about not being able to tell the difference between NPCs and humans. He says he did it because he can't intermix humans and NPCs, otherwise something bad will happen.
If I start losing track of who's a human and who's an NPC, who knows what could happen?
And while Caine doesn't elaborate on what that means, it's possible we could find out in future episodes. But anyways, if this theory is actually true, and something bad will happen if too many NPCs and humans are together in the circus, then I'm sure there are actually quite a few things that could actually go wrong with this. The first thing is it may overload the digital circus. If you're not aware, The Amazing Digital Circus takes place in a late 90s 3D VR video game. Games from that time weren't exactly graphically or technically marvels by today's standards, so not many objects could be loaded in a scene at once. Otherwise, the system running would be under intense stress from the game. Game consoles at that time were much better at running 3D games, at least compared to Windows computers, which may or may not be the computer used in the digital circus. What it comes down to, though, is that maybe having too many characters perfectly simulated in these computers, rather than being controlled by humans, could take up a lot of resources and potentially cause more glitches and bugs in the digital circus. Maybe the NPCs aren't meant to live in the Amazing Digital Circus at all. All of the NPCs are just made up of code, so it's possible that maybe the characters just aren't meant to live that way. Similar to an animal living outside of their natural habitat. The NPC could possibly die or even abstract if they're left in the circus for too long, because that's not where they're supposed to be in the first place. The final reason is that Caine might have some sort of tracking system that are attached to the humans, and if NPCs get in the mix, it might ruin whatever kind of experiments or whatnot that Caine is doing to track the humans, and everything would get messed up. And as I said before, it would cause glitches in the game, because we still don't know if he's evil or not. And while these theories may be true, I'm leaning more towards the fact that Caine is actually lying to Pomni, and something more is up than Caine lets on. My second theory as to why Caine killed Gummigoo is because Gummigoo might have actually known some things that he wasn't supposed to. When Pomni and Gummigoo glitch out of the map, he sees some really weird stuff. All of his friends and people he knows in the Candy Canyon Kingdom are standing in a T-pose in a blue and black checkered room with nothing else in it. And it seems that Pomni and Gummigoo went out of bounds where the extra models are stored, something common in video games. The whole experience, however, sort of gave Gummigoo an existential crisis. Pomni tells Gummigoo that he is an NPC in the game, and that neither him nor his friends are real. What's even worse is that Gummigoo notices that his mom isn't actually in the big collection of characters that he sees, which causes him to wonder why he doesn't remember his mother's face, which is pretty sad. Obviously, he's an NPC who has a preset set of memories, emotions, and personality. And while his character may have a mother, this mother doesn't actually exist, because in the context of the game that the Amazing Digital Circus cast go through, it doesn't require any space for Gummigoo's mom to exist, meaning that Gummigoo's mom isn't even real. Gummigoo and his friends aren't meant to have a very deep backstory that's fleshed out. Like they say in the show, they're just obstacles to be defeated. Once Gummigoo figures this out, things can start to go wrong for Caine. So in The Amazing Digital Circus, Gummigoo is the only NPC that knew they were, well, an NPC. But I have a feeling that an NPC knowing that they're an NPC can somehow mess with whatever plans Caine has. And that might be exactly why Caine killed him in the first place. Maybe Gummigoo knew something that the others don't because he was an NPC. And if he's an NPC made of code, maybe he's supposed to be a part of the digital circus, rather than existing in it, kind of like the mannequins. He may know more about its inner workings and possibly help the cast escape. This would make perfect sense, because we see Caine instantly pop Gummigoo out of existence, and say that bad things might happen if NPCs and regular humans begin to intermingle. So what he's saying might technically be true, but it would actually be bad for Caine, not the humans. Another theory I have is that maybe Gummigoo isn't gone after all. See, after Gummigoo is taken out of the digital circus, Ragatha tells Pomni that Caine likes to reuse NPCs, and it's possible that he'll reappear in a future adventure.
You know, he might be back in a future adventure. I know Caine sometimes likes to reuse NPCs.
While Gummigoo being taken to the digital circus permanently seems to be off the table due to Caine's rules, I think we should discuss if he'll ever come back, and how that would exactly look. As we know, Ragatha told Pomni that the NPCs reappear because Caine reuses them, but that doesn't exactly mean that the Gummigoo that Pomni meant will ever return, and to be quite honest, I don't think that'll ever happen. In fact, I think that if Gummigoo does ever happen to reappear again, Pomni will remember Gummigoo, but Gummigoo will have no idea who Pomni is. The NPCs most likely aren't made to have memories like that, so even if they quote-unquote reappear in another adventure due to Caine reusing NPCs, I don't think that means that Gummigoo in a new adventure would have any old memories that he did when Pomni and him were friends, and met in the weird backrooms place. If anything, his mind would probably just be wiped and he would have no idea who Pomni is. He would just go back to his default set of memories, thinking his mom is still real. I think if Pomni ever did meet Gummigoo again, though she might get quite messed up about it because he will forget everything about her, but Pomni will have remembered everything that happened when they first met, though this might not be as sad as we think. When Pomni and everyone else was at Kaufmo's funeral, Pomni had a vision of her falling down back into the cellar again, but instead, this time falling into the black abyss, and she was caught by her friends this time, which to me, this seems that she finally trusts her friends and settled into the circus. Now, there's one last thing I wanted to talk about, and it's actually kinda messed up when you think about it. My theory is that I think Ragatha knew what would happen to Gummigoo when he entered the circus, but didn't tell her, and if you think about it, throughout the entire show, Ragatha has taken Pomni under her wing, protected her, and has been especially kind, which it's kinda strange to be so friendly after only knowing her for a day, but I think that just might be Ragatha's personality. Even in the first episode, when Pomni does some pretty selfish things, Ragatha doesn't stay mad at Pomni for very long, and the very next day, she tries to assure Pomni that she isn't mad at her, and understands that Pomni did what she thought she had to do. Even if Ragatha might have been in intense pain while glitching out the way that she did after her confrontation with Kaufmo, Ragatha still decides to be kind to Pomni, and help her out throughout the digital circus because she knows it's hard being brand new to the circus, and how scary it must be knowing that you'll never be able to leave. Well, at least as far as we know. But in the second episode, Pomni and Ragatha were a bit awkward around each other. They ended up separating, and that's where Pomni meets Gummigoo, and they become friends because of their shared experience of feeling meaningless. Because of this, Pomni decides to take Gummigoo back to the digital circus. But when Pomni tells Ragatha, she says this.
Is that allowed?
As you can see, Ragatha sort of doubts Pomni for a moment before letting it go and telling Pomni what she's doing is nice of her. When they arrive back at the circus though, Gummigoo is killed by Caine, and I have a feeling though that Ragatha knew what was up, but still let Pomni find out the hard way in order to avoid a conflicting situation. And I mean, it's not too unlikely that she had the same idea when she first got to the digital circus. Ragatha might have also brought back an NPC, so it would only make sense that Ragatha knew what would happen and didn't tell Pomni, either for a good or a bad reason.